Okay, wonderful. So, before we get into today's session on pharmaceutical and crop industries, we'll just do a bit of a recap of what's to come in terms of the training for the next week and a half. So, Angela, if you go on to the next slide. So today we'll be looking at the pharmaceutical and crop science industries. We'll be looking at this from a broader perspective and then also from a Bayer perspective, and particularly how when working with these types of organisations, you can appeal to some of the buyers that you might be speaking to in terms of getting or trying to become part of their supply chain. Module 2 is going to be focused on sustainability. And again, we'll be looking at how sustainability is becoming business critical for many large organizations, and also exploring the sustainability strategy of Bayer. And then finally, with module 3, we're going to bring together everything that we've learned in terms of the pharmaceutical and crop science industry, and we'll be looking at some best practices when it comes to building pitches. We'll also be asking you to submit a 3-minute video pitch at the end of the programme. We're doing that so that way we can select the final 15 mentees, and I'll talk a bit more about that video at the end of this session, and we'll also be talking about it over the next 2 sessions. One point to note about module 3 actually is that there's 2 sessions. You don't need to join both sessions, just pick one or the other, but we've put 2 times in there because we're hoping to have smaller groups so that way we can do some breakouts. But yeah, just remember that you just need to join one of those sessions. So yeah, I think let's get started. So today's agenda, we'll look at the introductions with the speakers next, and then we'll be providing an overview on the pharmaceutical industry, followed by crop science. We'll also be looking at some of the challenges and opportunities in those spaces. And then we're going to open it up to a panel discussion with Bayer, with some questions that we have already. We'll then talk about the video project, and then we'll have a short wrap up. So let's meet the speakers. Today we have a fantastic lineup. I know that me and the team have really enjoyed our conversations in preparation for this session. And so we have Tia N, who is the Global Head of Inclusion and Diversity. And we're going to hear from Tia very shortly, who's going to give us an overview about Bayer. We also have Cecilia Muller, and Cecilia's role is Global Head of Marketing Excellence, and I am from a marketing background, so definitely enjoyed my conversations there. And then we also have Barbara McLaurin, who's going to talk to us about crop science, and Barbara is a Global Communications Manager for Product Supply and Bayer Crop Science. So we've got an expert panel, and we're really looking forward to sharing their insight and expertise about the industry and Bayer. I've realised I've not introduced myself, so I should do that too. My name's Laura DiCarlo. So I'm part of a leadership team of a woman-owned business, which is also woman-led. We're called Quadmark. And we are a learning and training consultancy, and we're certified by WeConnect. And I think one of the wonderful things about this programme is, one, it's supporting women-owned businesses in Germany and Switzerland, but it's also living and breathing its support for women-owned businesses. So Quadmark was rewarded this as part of a competitive RFP, along with another project coordinator from Phipps Consulting, who's Andrea, who many of you will probably know on the call. So it's great that Bayer and WeConnect have already been investing in women-owned businesses even before they've started the Elevate programme. I'm also part of the advisory council at WeConnect. So yes, generally very active and happy to support women in terms of enabling them to get more access to buyers. So yeah, we'll do LinkedIn connections later, but would really love to hear from anybody and support anybody in any way that I can. So let's do a little bit of poll interactivity. So this is what we were talking about earlier with Slido. So if you could take your phone out, and then if you could scan the QR code. Sometimes it will ask you to enter the code, sometimes not. So if it does, the code that you need to enter is 1355163. It's also on the screen. And then we'll move on to some questions. This is the part where Angela and I get very nervous. We've rehearsed this part multiple times, but you can never quite tell whether or not technology is going to be kind to you on the day. So I'm very much hoping it is going to be kind to us today. Okay, I think let's give it a couple more seconds, and then Angela, let's see if tech is going to be kind to us. Okay, let's go on to the first question. So I think it would be really interesting to understand the kind of level of knowledge within the group. So do you have any experience working with or in the pharmaceutical industry in the past? And it's simple yes and no answer. Okay, shall we see if those results have come in?
We're at 26 responses, so just a few more and then we'll show you the results.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Oh, that is good. So 65% of the group have some experience within the pharmaceutical industry and 33% no. So a good mix of experience there. Okay, how about crop science? We'll move on to the next question, which you should see loading on your phone now. Sometimes it takes just a couple of seconds. So do you have any experience working with or in the crop science industry? I have a feeling, Barbara, that there might be a bit more pharmaceutical experience. Okay, we're on 23 responses, just a couple more to come in. Oh, yeah, complete flip. So 78% don't currently have experience in crop science, but 22% do. So yeah, maybe by the end of this program, we'll have more people with experience. And then the final question, how confident do you feel pitching your service or product to organizations in the pharmaceutical or crop science industries? So we've got 3 answers here. Very confident, I'm okay with it, need some help. So we're up to 24 responses. Okay, we're at 27, so I think let's go to the response. So again, a good mix here. So 39% need help, 32% are okay, and 29% are very confident. Thank you. I think I also know from personal experience, sometimes it can be a mixture between confidence and seeking out those opportunities. So hopefully by the end of this program, you'll be able to, one, know how to seek out the opportunities, and we can increase some of those confidence levels as well. Okay, so thank you very much for participating in our survey, and thank you, Slido, for behaving itself. That's one of our kind of tech channel challenges overcome for this session. So I'm going to hand over to Tia, who's the Global Head of Inclusion and Diversity, and Tia is just going to give you all a bit of an introduction into Bayer. So over to you.
Thank you, Laura, for the introduction, and always glad when technology works. As Laura mentioned, happy to be here today and introducing you initially to Bayer as a whole, and then diving into the pharma division with my colleague Cecilia, and then on to Barbara for crop science. So most of you might know who Bayer is. We're quite a big organization that operates globally, and we're a life sciences company that operates, across many different regions, locations, and so forth. And we're a global leader in healthcare, nutrition, and also the agricultural business. And we have a number of innovative products that support our efforts in overcoming some of the major challenges that present itself in this current modern age. So thinking about our growers, the aging population, and when we think about how do we serve our customers, our patients, our farmers, you might be all very familiar with our motto of health for all, hunger for none. And, we have 3 divisions that allow us to really drive that vision and that mission of health for all, hunger for none. The first one being crop science. So we really aim to ensure the world has a reliable supply of high quality food, looking at sustainability, feed and plant-based raw materials, and really looking to responsibly use our natural resources is obviously always a top priority. If you click, we have the second division, which is, and these are in no order of importance or value. The next one is pharmaceuticals. Here, our vision is to treat the untreatable, cure disease, and offer hope. And finally, consumer health, our third division. And once again, in line with health for all, hunger for none, the consumer health division really aims to put together the end-to-end piece of health and hunger, and helping everyone lead a very healthy lifestyle, while at the same time protecting our entire ecosystem. And so really the overall purpose of Bayer is science for a better life. And we have many different initiatives, many different products, many different ways of working in order to really achieve that goal. So when we think about how many employees we have worldwide, so as of 2023, there are roughly over 99,000 employees. So if you click to reveal that, and so it's as of 2022, we've had roughly 101,000, and really let's look at the divisional aspects in more detail on the next slide. So looking at our fiscal data, you'll notice here, overall, we have roughly 48,000, I'll round it up, in terms of sales, 48 billion, split between the consumer health, crop, pharmaceuticals, and on the right-hand side, some reconciliation. And when we think about the different divisions, taking crop science, we're one of the world leaders in agriculture, products. And our businesses really reach a number of areas. So crop protection, seeds, traits, digital farming, and we have a really wide and broad portfolio of high value seeds that improve plant traits. And we'll go a little bit further into details when Barbara introduces that. In terms of pharmaceuticals, we really concentrate on prescription products and medicines, focusing on cardiology, women's health, some specialty therapeutics such as oncology, hematology, ophthalmology, and recently putting into that portfolio cell and gene therapy. And then when we think about consumer health, really one of the world's leading suppliers of non-prescription medicines or over-the-counter medicines for self-medication, self-care, and really looking at the portfolio of consumer products. It reaches nutritional supplements, allergy. Some of you have probably used some of our cold and flu medication, dermatology, bepantene, pain and cardiovascular risk prevention, and also digestive health. And in terms of the enabling functions, this is really the core and the backbone of the divisions really being able to run their business, keep the lights on and so forth. So thinking about group finance, information technology, our human resources colleagues, procurement, and so forth. And we have also a number of global group competency hubs and centers that support our business processes and services across the 3 divisions. So I'll stop for now and pause, and I'll hand it over to Laura.
Oh, thank you very much. And yeah, it was great to get that overview of Bayer. We're going to move on to pharmaceutical now in more detail. And I think one of the themes that I found particularly interesting having these conversations in preparation for this was definitely we kept coming back to the trend in terms of higher life expectancy in the global population. There's also an increase in chronic diseases, which clearly affect quality of life. And because of that, we really see a demand in terms of innovative drugs in the healthcare industry. And it was really great to understand how Bayer are responding to some of these challenges. And they're very big challenges to solve. So yes, so I'm going to pass over to Thea again, and Thea's going to run through in more detail pharmaceutical at Bayer, supported by Cecilia as well.
Thank you. So back to me. So when we think about the pharmaceuticals industry, you know, our president and CEO, Stefan Ulrich, what does he say about the pharmaceuticals industry? You know, we truly aspire to be one of the leading pharmaceutical organizations that focus on breakthrough technologies to transform our patient health. So treating the untreatable, yeah, and offering hope. And so this is a really inspiring vision to live up to. And when we think about, as mentioned before, pharmaceuticals really focus on prescription medication, so in consumer health, the over-the-counter piece. So when we think about prescription products, we think about cardiology, our women's healthcare piece. From a specialty piece, we look at oncology, cardiovascular, hematology, ophthalmology. And when we think about cell and gene therapy, we're looking at spanning the entire value chain from research development to marketing and to the patient piece when thinking about cell and gene therapy as well. And one of our other big sort of units is radiology. So radiology is really focused on the diagnostic imaging equipment and digital solutions together with contrast agents as well. And so when you think about what's on the screen here, what's the overall sales figure in euros for 2023? This is quite a big number, yeah, 18.1 billion. And when we think about the investments that we make in R&D, in creating and those prescription medications. In 2023, we invested 3.3 billion. And worldwide, across all of our different markets, we have roughly 37,000 employees as of 2023. And so when we think about our markets, the products, the prescription products, our specialty therapeutic areas, cell and gene therapy, we also keep in mind who are our patients, yeah, and what's the diversity of our patients, and how does that reflect our employee base worldwide, and how do we capture that diversity of patients in all of the aspects that we in all aspects of our work within not only pharma, but across consumer health, crop, and the enabling functions. And when we think about the R&D budget, if we click to the next slide, what does that really break down into? What is the development process? And this is just a very high level overview of what the drug development process looks like within pharma. So if we look on the left-hand side here, we've got the drug discovery and preclinical studies from a high level pharmaceutical industry's perspective. In the middle, we've got clinical development. To the right, regulatory review and approval. And then finally, the post-marketing and monitoring piece. And so when we break that down into what those different stage gates or elements look like within Bayer itself, we have this concept of D1 all the way to a D8 and the regulatory approval. So when we look at the first three bubbles here at the bottom of the drug discovery and preclinical studies phase, we think about lead generation, looking at those novel targets at the very, very early stage. And then starting to think about what lead optimization looks like, that preclinical candidate confirmation, and then moving on to D4 all the way to D7, we think about, well, what's that phase 1 decision? Can we go into the clinical trials? What does those clinical trials look like? Who should be part of the clinical trials? The location of the clinical trials and so forth, the diversity of the patients in those clinical trials. So there are 3 phases of clinical trials. And then finally, once the FDA approves and all the data and indications showcase that this is a modality that is effective, has efficacy, and so forth, we go to release for submission, and then finally that regulatory approval, and it's then up to launching and also the pre-launch piece, the launching, and then going into market. And so if we go to a question, in terms of our whole R&D process, how long do you think that it takes for one product on average to go through this entire stage of development, from the discovery piece all the way to the regulatory approval and marketing, and it actually the prescription medication actually being put on the shelves of the pharmacists, the chemists, and so forth? If you could maybe put that in the chat. Very good. So we have a range from 1, 5 to 20 years. And the answer is approximately 10 years. So it is a significant investment over a very significant period of time. And it really depends on a number of factors. So there's obviously the complexity of the product, the regulatory requirements, the clinical trial timeframes, any unforeseen challenges that might come into play throughout that development process. Yeah. And on average, from the initial discovery, it's a minimum of 10 to 15 years, yeah, from that drug approval to full commercialization. Some products might take a lot longer, and others actually might get fast-tracked through various acceleration approval pathways, especially if we think about whether a medication addresses an urgent unmet medical need. So when we think about that 10 to 15 year life cycle, I'll pose another question. What do you think the success rate is? How many drugs actually that enter the clinical trials will ultimately receive that regulatory approval and actually be commercialized? If you can put that in the chat. 35, 5%, 10? Yeah, there's a lot of answers, which is really, really interesting. It's actually less than 10%. So when we think about the success rate, it also very much depends on several factors. But generally, the success rate is quite low, especially in the later stages of that drug development process. And when we think about, estimates, it's roughly 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 15,000, 5,000 compounds research that actually enter that preclinical testing stage to become an actual approved drug. Now, some of our service or products support the pharma industry. We have to remember it's important that, for you all to be aware of all of these stages and all the different functions and all the different roles and needs involved throughout that, drug development process. So when you think about the services that you offer, keep this in the back of your mind when thinking about pitching your services or products to the organization. So if we think about now, what's that ecosystem surrounding that drug development process? If you go quickly to the next slide, let's really understand the entire healthcare ecosystem here. And as you'll notice, this is really for illustration purposes. So central to the ecosystem is the patient or the caregiver. Yeah, and surrounding that patient is the so-called healthcare ecosystem. So we have the hospitals, we have the pharmacies, the primary caregivers, the payers, the specialists, and the whole integrated health network. And there are a number of influences in the middle here. You've got technology, you've got the patient advocacy groups, you've also got the payers, the insurance companies, and you've also got the policy groups as well. And if you click again, in terms of what is the most important element of the ecosystem, that's the patient. Yeah, they are core to what we do. I mean, it's all fine and well to go and have a research, a compound and so forth, but we have no patients to eventually treat. So everything comes back to our patients. We need to assess the best possible treatment and care. And so your services, the products that you offer when you enter the pharmaceutical industry has to always have that patient focus. And it's really important now to understand this whole ecosystem and thinking about, well, what does that mean in terms of the patient journey? And so here, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Cecilia, to walk through what does the patient journey look like and what does it really mean?
Thank you. Thank you, Tia. Can you hear me well? Yeah, cool. So thank you for having me. Also very interesting to join this discussion and looking forward to a later discussion. So as Tia said, everything starts with us understanding the patient journey. And as you've heard from her, that development process takes a long, long time. So this is nothing that we do once and that we want to understand once. We need to keep an eye on how does this patient journey look like. Let me explain to you a bit what do we mean by that, right? For us, it's important to truly understand the experience from the patient point of view. Everything starts and ends with the patient. So at any stage, also in different functions within our company, we need to make sure that we keep the patient at the core and we understand their journey through their disease, through their symptoms, understanding their condition. So here is just an example. And the way we read this journey is, the higher the curve, the better experience for the patient. The lower the line, the blue line that you see, the worse the experience for the patient is. And we split the patient journey into these three kind of phases, from diagnosis to treatment to patient outcomes. And every patient, depending on their disease, the condition, will have a different experience. So it's truly qualitative, and we do qualitative research, we exchange with patients, with patient group organizations from the early start, from the very beginning, to understand the pain points that they have. And that journey usually starts like this, right, with the initial good experience, but then the patient starting to feel some symptoms, something is not well, right? They start researching until they're truly aware, okay, something is wrong, I need to consult. And it takes, depending on the condition, depending on the disease, it might take longer to really get to the point of having a really good treatment option for them. So there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of confusion, there are many sources looked into, the many physicians, appointments, analysis done, and all of this adds pain and concern to the patients and the caregivers, right, and their environment. So we want to really understand this in order to make sure that we identify how can we make this experience better, right? It's not just about the treatment in the middle or at the end. It's really about how can we help patients to have a better experience throughout their condition and their disease, and help them to manage that situation better. So with that, we wanted to share with you a few elements that are very specific to pharma, like the development process, like the whole colorful stakeholder ecosystem, and of course the patient journey, because those are critical points to us. So Laura, going back to you.
Thank you, Cecilia. So yeah, for those who don't have much exposure to the pharma industry, which was certainly the position that I was in, I found it fascinating, but also quite terrifying that it can take 10 years to get a product to go to market. I've often worked in tech, where it can take a matter of months, and sometimes it may be a year. And that can feel like a long time. So yes, there's definitely some challenges that the pharma industry face, and that potentially some of the women-owned businesses here could definitely contribute to supporting Bayer or other pharmaceutical companies in terms of overcoming those challenges. We're going to have a look at in more detail some of the specific challenges that Bayer face as well, in addition to long lead times when it comes to product development. So we'll take a look at those now. I know that I certainly found it very interesting, again, having a conversation with Cecilia about omni-channel. I'm from a marketing background, so that's definitely an area that I've been involved in before. And as we know, marketing and sales are a big challenge for most businesses. But I think, Cecilia, it'd be great if you could, I guess, repeat some of the conversation and talk about some of the themes that we spoke about in our conversation about the challenges, particularly facing pharmaceutical.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm happy to share. I mean, so one of the challenges that we still face is omni-channel marketing, right? We have advanced a lot in that regard, and also Bayer investing a lot in this area. Still, the pharmaceutical business is different, right? If we think about our favorite brands, we're used to, search for them easily, find them, buy them, receive ads, information, and have apps that help us look at them in social media. So there is a lot of accessibility to the information, but also, from those companies, a lot of data and information that they have in order to improve that experience for the customer, also in order to help that process throughout the process, right? In the case of pharma, it's quite different, right? We have a very regulated environment. Of course, we talk about very specific topics, and we need to make sure that the doctor is always the gatekeeper, right? There are a few markets, I think in the US we can do DTC, direct to consumer communication, but that's the exception, and there is a reason for that too. So actually, a gatekeeper definitely is the physician. So the traditional way of promoting our products was, through sales force, through sales representatives who have those discussions with the physician, through medical liaisons who have more the scientific discussion with the physicians, of course, the congresses, of course, there are some webinars. And physicians, depending on assessing patients and defining what the patient needs, they would prescribe products and the patient would, comply or not to that prescription. During COVID, we had a lot of advances in the way of we use different channels also to communicate to physicians, right? Physicians are people. They're also used to other tools and other technologies, and they like to search for things separately. Some like podcasts, some like, some newsletters, some want to be connected via WhatsApp. So there's a lot of work in understanding their needs, but we're not there yet, right? We need to make sure that we achieve a situation in which we can reach the doctors with the information that they need at the time they need it in the way they want it, right? To make that relevant to them. And the issue we have is in the connectivity of all those different channels. Yeah, it's difficult for us to really close the loop. So we have advanced a lot. We have marketing automation. Still, there are some challenges in that area. So happy also to discuss them later if there's more interest, and to see if some of you can also help us with that. Laura, back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely is a challenging landscape. Yeah, lots of complex stakeholders in that omni-channel process. So another topic that came up in these conversations, which I'm sure we all can't get away from, is AI. It's disrupting every industry out there. It's certainly disrupting mine, hopefully in a positive way. And so, yes, it's no surprise that it's affecting Bayer as well. So it would be great if you could explain some of the ways that AI is impacting pharma.
So AI brings a lot of opportunities, right? I wouldn't see this as a challenge. I think that there are a lot of opportunities that it brings, but it needs exploration. And it can help us to shorten timelines, right? To shorten processes. This could maybe impact the long timelines we have for clinical studies, right? Allowing us to summarize some evidence quicker, allowing us to put together the evidence that we need in order to move from one decision to the other in a more efficient way. There are many things that are being explored in that regard, regarding, again, shortening timelines, helping us to be faster and more efficient. Thinking about different scenarios, right, of options that we have. Another application that I see very relevant is in content creation. So, of course, coming from marketing, definitely, but also for medical. It's a way of creating relevant content quicker, also from imagery to campaigns, and we need to be faster with that. So actually, it's a very good help, and we are already, of course, experimenting in that area. One additional thing I want to add is, AI has helped us already in imaging, in diagnostics, when thinking about radiology, right? To really identify certain patterns that can lead to an early diagnosis and early treatment for patients. So helping the radiologists, helping physicians to identify patterns early on and start maybe assessing the patient in a different way or gaining some time there. So again, a lot of opportunities. The challenge that we see is that technology moves fast, but the regulators need to keep up that pace, right? To keep up with the changes. We see a lot of willingness of regulators to adapt and to make things a bit more flexible, considering technology. Still, there's a lot to do. So I think that that's a bigger challenge that we all have, but there are a lot of opportunities in AI, and we're definitely learning by doing. So we're definitely open to additional proposals and ideas to leverage this technology.
Yeah, I think also from again a personal perspective within my own work, I think some people can view AI as a threat, but actually what the conversations that we're having with clients is they're curious about how we are using it. They don't want to replace us with AI. I think the technology isn't there yet, but I think my kind of, I guess, question to the women-owned businesses, a rhetorical question here for the time being, would be to think about actually how AI can support your business and to be open to it, because many of your clients won't be wanting you to use it to replace you. They want you to embrace it, so that way they can free you up so you can bring more consultancy to the conversation, and the kind of lower value tasks within an organization can benefit from efficiency. So it's definitely a conversation that's going to be ongoing. I think it's not going away anytime soon. So thank you, Cecilia and Thea. We're going to move on now to crop science. So I'm going to hand over to Barbara very shortly. I can see that there's some questions that have come in the chat. We've not got time to pause and answer all those questions yet. My colleague Jenny is making notes of those questions, so anything we don't answer in this session or in the discussion panel, we'll make sure we take away and we'll get answers from you, from the speakers. So without further ado, over to Barbara, who's the Global Communications Manager for Product and Supply at Bayer Crop Science.
Thank you so much, Laura. I first want to address everyone and their stated, I don't want to say ignorance, but not knowledge of crop science and agriculture. I want to share with you my personal experience. I came to Bayer Crop Science 10.5 years ago with a healthcare marketing, communications, and customer experience background. So didn't know the world of agriculture at all. And it doesn't take a lot to learn what farmers need. If you think about what you already know from the pharma industry and adapt that to agriculture, you'll be on your way. For us, the customer experience is about the farmer. So instead of patients and doctors, you're thinking about the farmers and some of the incredible challenges that they face. I mean, every day they're trying to produce crops in the face of changing weather conditions and weeds and pests and everything else that are going against them. So keep that in mind. We are very customer focused around our farmers. And even larger than that, we think about the world's challenges overall with regard to climate change, limited natural resources, and of course, a growing population, right? Agriculture is actually part of the solution, helping farmers grow not only enough, but also better for the planet and the people. So what we do at Bayer Crop Science is combine that modern science with the farmer's ingenuity. And our goal, of course, is to put innovation at their fingertips to help them nourish our growing world and maintain natural resources. So we're going to go ahead and explore this in a little bit more detail here. Remember earlier when we talked about health for all, hunger for none? We're going to talk right now about the second part of that. That's the hunger for none. We do in Bayer Crop Science touch on the health for all in producing nutritious fruits and vegetables, but we really focus on that broader hunger for none, producing not only fruits and vegetables, but also broadacre corn and soybeans. So when we think about how we can improve the different areas of crop science, these are the key areas for consideration. Think about digital farming systems. We're helping farmers use their data to help them drive better decisions on the farm. When we look at seeds and traits, we're developing seeds that enable farmers to grow enough while producing less. While producing more, but less to impact to the environment. And of course, our research and development, our innovation pipeline, that's really our journey towards regenerative agriculture and doing things better. Crop protection is an area where we have the most opportunity to improve our impact on our climate. And that's where we're doing innovations to help farmers protect their harvest. And then lastly, with climate change, our shared global responsibility, where we're advancing agriculture, is vital to addressing the issues with climate change. Next slide, please. Okay, so at Bayer Crop Science, our president, his name is Rodrigo Santos. He said the world is hungry not only for food, fiber, and fuel, but for innovative solutions that restore natural resources and help address climate change. So it's very inspiring to us that our crop science division is the world's leading agriculture enterprise with businesses in crop protection, seeds and traits, and digital farming. Bayer's leadership in agriculture provides tailored solutions for farmers to plant, grow, and protect their harvest using less land, less water, and less energy. So Bayer leads the way in crop sciences by offering a broad portfolio of high-value seeds with improved plant traits, innovative chemical, and biological crop protection products. We're also providing digital solutions and extensive customer service for sustainable agriculture and marketing these products via wholesalers and retailers or directly to the farmers. In the digital space, Bayer includes a large-scale digital agriculture platform to create data-driven ecosystem for farmers that combine insights, remote technology, agronomic solutions, and artificial intelligence that generates the best possible outcome for every field. In 2023, we had 23.3 billion euro in sales. We have 1.9 billion euro investment in research and development. We invest more than any other agricultural company out there. And then all of this is made possible by the 35,000 employees worldwide. So let's go on to our next. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about food security.
So Barbara, earlier in the presentation, you were talking about climate change. That again is clearly a very important topic that's coming up more and more. So I guess thinking about climate change and then also thinking about the tension between growing population, housing needs of that growing population, how is Bayer and organisations like Bayer in this space addressing or coming up with solutions to manage the loss of arable land for human habitation?
Yeah, so like I said before, the crop protection area is the biggest area we have, the biggest opportunity we have to improve the footprint in greenhouse gas emissions. So we're always doing something different to elevate and minimize the need for those crop protection products. How do we perfect them over time? It's really shocking when you think about 40% of all crops are lost to pests and diseases every year. So what we're trying to do is help the farmers grow efficiently, trying to pinpoint into those crops so they can address their with herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, so they don't face those diseases, but do it in a very ecologically safe way.
And then my next question was going to be similar to pharma. AI is clearly a big disruptor in good and challenging ways for all sectors. So thinking about crop science and the trend of AI, how is it affecting crop science and also the agricultural space as a whole?
Yeah, we're doing a lot more with artificial intelligence. I'm sorry, I'm going to let that build out there. I didn't really address the smallholder farms and the impact we're making with very small growers that are growing for their families, not even the large growers. We, of course, address the large growers, but those smallholder farms are critical to us. Back to AI, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because we do have tools and systems that help create value for farmers and generate positive outcomes for nature. So platforms like Climate Field View, which help farmers identify which crops will do well in which soil types and bring new level of precision to every on-farm decision. So we're really helping to drive transparency by connecting farmers, agribusiness, and consumers with data and insights. And it's just been unprecedented speed and precision in trait design and breeding new crops and developing the next generation of crop protection. So digital is key for us.
Yeah, it's not going away, is it? Thank you, Barbara. So I think if we go on to the next slide, Angela. So we've spoken a lot about pharma, we've spoken about crop science, and also Bayer as a company as a whole. I'm sure that everybody on this call is also curious about how this is going to affect maybe some of the procurement decisions at Bayer and how that side of the business works. So we're just going to have a look at that now. And I'm going to hand over to Thea again shortly. We understand that many of the women-owned businesses on this call are from the service sectors. Thea, can you tell us a bit more about some of the enabling functions at Bayer, where there would be potential opportunities for this group of women-owned businesses?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. When we think about our enabling functions, in this slide here, we've got group finance, we've got information technology, procurement, and human resources. And they serve the entire company across the globe through so-called group-wide competence centers. And, these businesses really they're bundled to support our processes and services. And they're very much also very customer focused. They are focused on the employees as the customer. Yeah. So what are our information technology needs? What does the financial model look like for our product teams, our customer teams, and so forth? What's the flow of financial resources? What's the flow of talent across within a division, across the divisions, and so forth? And when we think about the employee base worldwide within enabling functions, as of 2023, we've got roughly 16,500 employees. And if we go to the next slide and focus on just procurement itself, what are the procurement pathways? There's two components. We have the directs and the indirects. And so directs are things like medical devices, raw materials, and equipment. And indirects are things like marketing, content, professional services, and potential new IT systems. Yeah. And when we think about the processes used to procure direct services and products, it can take up to 3 years, because we're really thinking about medical devices. But when we think about indirects, we're looking more at a much shorter time frame. So if you need potentially a completely new IT system, that could take a little bit longer, depending on the complexity of the IT system. If you're looking for a new marketing tool, it can take up to 3 to 6 months to maybe even a year, depending. And when we think about the services sector, that is much shorter, because it could be you need a agency to provide some content or some marketing material and so forth. So, and if we have so-called master service agreements already in place and their preferred vendors or suppliers and so forth, those processes are even shorter, because all of those contractual agreements and rate cards and so forth are already in play. Yeah. So when we think about indirects, good news for the services industry, it's much faster. Yeah. So if you as women-owned businesses have a clear and pitch deck with clarity on what your services are, what your value add is, and how you can impact the outcome of the organization, those process times to receive your services is obviously going to be a lot faster. So when we think about what are our common goals when we think about Bayer and we think about the services and products that you're going to offer us. So when we think about our customer needs, we have a lot of research that we've done. Our customers, our patients, our farmers, they're at the heart of everything that we do. Yeah, so we need to really look for services and solutions that fit that customer, patient, and farmer need. So it's really for you as potential suppliers, potential partners, that you really understand and identify what is it that we as an organization need. Yeah, what is it that is going, what services will you offer that will truly impact and create that value add? What's that value flow, that value stream that you add to the demands and the requirements that we have? I think, is there another? Yep. And also really looking to have a win-win situation where we find the best solution to fit that that problem. A creative, fit for purpose solution. Very good. And then when we think about the going, into the discussion later on, I think, Laura, I'm going to give it to you. I think I missed out on a slide, but I'm not entirely sure.
No, you've covered it all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
So we're going to move to the panel discussion part of the session today. I can see that there's, again, questions coming in. I know that Cecilia's picked up some of the answers, and I think Barbara has replied to some of the chats as well. As I said, we won't have time to cover everything today, but if you do have questions, please do pop them in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get answers to you and follow up via email. And yes, Jenny is just confirming that she's taking notes of all the questions. So they definitely won't go unanswered. Okay, so let's move on to the discussion section. So we've heard from our speakers. I think before we go into some of the questions, it would be great just to find out a little more about yourself. So I think, Cecilia, are you happy to go first and just, I guess, explain a bit more about your role and what working life at Bayer is like?
Yes, I'm happy to go first. So again, I'm very happy to be here. I need to say that I'm originally from Uruguay, a very small country in South America, 3 million people. And I worked at Bayer already for more than 20 years, almost 25. I started in Uruguay, a small organization, 5 years there, then 6 years in the regional headquarters for pharma at that time in Mexico. That was the regional headquarters for Latin America. And I've been here based in Global in Berlin, which is the global headquarters for pharma, for 13 years. So I moved to Mexico 2 years and I stayed 6. I moved to Germany for 2 years and I stayed now for 13, and I think I will stay here. So I started at Bayer very young, very early. And I think that it fascinates me. It fascinates me how we can impact people's lives, right? In whatever functions we are. Now I'm working in marketing, but I was able in the country to visit HCPs, physicians, to get to know, to have discussions with patients. Same in the region, same in global. So that connection to people, really understanding their needs and being able to make that patient experience, as I shared with you, better. That is what really motivates me. So I really see how we save lives sometimes, how we improve quality of life sometimes, how we extend life sometimes, and more time with family, more time for patients with their families. I guess we've all experienced some losses. My mother died when I was 16 years old, and she died of leukemia. So I really think that, if we can make the lives of the patients and the caregivers and the families better, then, that's a win for me. So that's what motivates me for being at Bayer and in pharma.
Thank you, Cecilia, for sharing your story. And yeah, it's definitely something that we've noticed as part of the team working with you, but also with Thea and Barbara, is just the passion that you all have for your work and what you do. Yeah, it's been incredible speaking with you all as part of this, and it definitely comes through. So yes, thank you. Thea, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I head up diversity, equity, inclusion for the pharma division globally. And I've been working with Bayer for almost 10 years now. And I'm originally from Cambodia. I was born there. I grew up in Australia, in Melbourne. And I've lived, you might hear that Aussie twang coming out. I've lived in a number of different countries, worked in a lot of different industries. I've been in the life sciences industry for the 10 years that I've been with Bayer. And I've lived in Germany and in Berlin for roughly 14 years. And in my role, I don't look at D&I from just a HR perspective. When we think about our patients, our R&D, drug development process, the clinical trials, the supplier landscape, it all touches D&I in some way, shape, or form. And so when I think about the impact that I have in my role, it touches the entire value chain of our organization and of any industry. So we think about supplier diversity, we think about diversity in clinical trials, diversity in our employee base. Do we reflect the population base where we sell our products, sell to our market, to our customers, to our patients, to our farmers? How do we bring that perspective in, that outside in perspective, but also give that perspective and reflect our employee base with the markets and our sales footprint and so forth. I have two children. I'm married to a German man, and I have ethnically diverse children. And so they drive everything and motivate everything that I do in this space, because I need to have this sense of security, this sense of passion that I'm making a better world for my children and for all the children, the next generation, because I want there to be equity, I want there to be inclusion, and I want our organizations to reflect the immense diversity that exists in our world. So that's why I'm super passionate to work for Bayer, and I'm incredibly passionate about driving diversity, equity, inclusion, not just in Bayer, but across our industries, across our markets, everything that we do. So that's me really quickly.
Thank you. And in the nicest possible way, I can't wait for the day until the diversity role no longer exists. But until then,
Exactly.
I think the work that you do is incredibly important. And yeah, it's wonderful that we have people with such passion that pursue that. So thank you, Thea. Barbara, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yes. So as I said, I've been with Bayer for the past 10 and a half years. Came to Bayer through healthcare industry. So I had to learn the agriculture industry. And I did notice at the time, especially being a native of the US, that a lot of our company is white men. And in that 10 and a half years time, I am so proud to see the diversification of gender and races and everything else when it comes to the people who are assuming leadership roles in Bayer. That's been a wonderful change for us. I've had roles in the vegetable seed division globally, so it's been exciting to be on farms in all parts of the world and really seeing the diversity of farmers out there. In the US, of course, we see the large broad acre farmers. And then you get to other parts of the world where the smallholder farmer is doing so much work and how we can make it better for them as well. So roles in global marketing, customer strategy and insights, customer experience. And that to me has been probably one of my favorite roles, just because it brings us so close to what our end user needs and how can we make it easier to do business. And as suppliers, if you can position yourself as helping us to do things more efficiently and more customer focused, that is a huge win. I moved over to the product supply area about 3 years ago and doing communications for them, first in North America and now globally. Of course, we have 3 large bucketed areas. If you think about the commercial space, which includes sales and marketing, the research and development space, and then the product supply space. So I deal with employees who are everywhere from in the plants and in the sites, and they're doing the work, to the people who are in supply chain management and more corporate types. So it's a great variety, and it just makes me really proud to be part of Bayer because we are global. And yet, even though we are a large organization, we try to deal it down to each farmer one at a time. What do they need, and how can we make their life better? Because they're the ones who are going to feed us.
Yeah, this is very true. Thank you, Barbara. And yeah, we've definitely experienced the strides forward that Bayer have made from a D&I perspective. And yeah, it's clear that especially that visibility of women and within the organisation is important to Bayer, including with the mentoring of this programme and the previous programmes that they've run. So yeah. We're going to move on to the discussions questions now. And Cecilia, when we spoke, you had a great analogy about pharmaceutical and business models. So do you want to give us a quick overview of that one?
Yes, so happy to share that analogy. I simplified it a lot, but I loved it when I learned about it in a book when looking into access for pharma. So let me share that example with you. So imagine a restaurant, right? In a restaurant, the customer enters the restaurant, orders a dish that chooses from the menu, will eat that meal, and then pays the bill and leaves. Right? So the same person is the one choosing, eating, paying, and then done. So in pharma, if we think about pharma, the doctor is the one who chooses the meal, right? Imagine the customer is the patient. The patient is hungry in this case, and the doctor is the one who would choose that meal for the patient. The patient will eat it, and the payer is actually the one who pays the bill, right? The hospital, the payer will cover, the insurance will cover the cost of that meal. So as Jaya shared, in pharma, there are many stakeholders, right? And this analogy shows just a very simplified version of some of the key stakeholders. But what is important to understand is that complexity, right? Of not the same person is the one that will make the final decision. Of course, the patient needs to agree to the choice that the doctor makes. But still, it's important to understand the dynamics of the market and the relevance of all the different stakeholders, which varies also depending on the country, right? So there are different regulations and healthcare systems. But in brief, that is somehow the business model.
Thank you. I definitely found it helpful. It's a very nice simplification of how the ecosystem works. Okay, Barbara, we are going to go over to you next. Can you tell us about some innovations in agriculture and why they stand out to you?
Yes, well, agriculture is really about feeding the world, but it's also about how are we going to help farmers judiciously conserve on resources and ensure that they're able to farm in a holistic way that are not going to destroy the planet. So we think a lot about sustainability and farming practices. So as I mentioned earlier, with smallholder farmers, really helping them with direct seeded rice. And that basically is securing rice production in eco-friendly practices. So no more do they have to burn down their straw. Really harvesting it and repurposing it for animal feed has been a much more viable way to help preserve the planet. But you also have to remember how critical that rice is for the world's population. For nearly 80% of their dietary needs is really where rice is. So we do a method of direct seeded rice where we're using less water. Another case I would say goes to the much more sophisticated area of how we're using AI. And I started to mention about using AI to share this collective knowledge that we have in the organization and from around the world, and training large language models, right? How to take in and ingest all those years of experience, all the data and insights that we have from our agronomist, and being able to boil that down. So what used to take maybe hours, days to access agronomic information for our farmers. Now it's being voice fed and it can be called up right away. So farmers are able to act as quickly as possible when they're in a planting situation to know the proper planting application. What are the performance characteristics under their specific conditions or the changing weather? So those are two scenarios I think that really stand out for me as ways that we are trying to innovate in agriculture.
Thank you, Barbara. So I've got my next question is actually for all of you. So what key regulations should companies be aware of to join the supplier chain in a large organization such as Bayer?
Yeah, let me start off with answering that, if that's okay. I mean, some of you might have heard about the supply chain due diligence legislation, the so-called LKSG. Yeah, this is one legislation, one directive of many, depending on the regions, depending on the global nature of the supply chains of an organization. And these directives and considerations really look at, specifically this one, is focused on suppliers and employees of roughly 1,000 and more. But when we think about it, it's looking at the due diligence and obligations that businesses need to take in consideration. And we think about human rights, environmental protection, that reach across the entire value chain. So now, we're not thinking just only in pharma, but when you think about agriculture, yeah. And there's legislation, there's due diligence on making sure there's, lower reductions in environmental pollution. We're looking at ensuring that there's, no violation of human slavery or modern slavery, yeah, or human traffic or forced labor laws and things like that. And when we think about manufacturers and they need to really understand their upstream suppliers at every single stage of that entire value chain, and also thinking about who to select according to your sustainability criteria as well. The other component is when we think about, especially the services industry, GDPR laws. How do we look at making sure we take care of all the customer data, patient data, employee data, and so on and so forth. So that's just some initial thoughts. Barbara, Cecilia, any additional thoughts?
Well, definitely the data security and privacy is really a big one. I think also doing your own due diligence and homework when you think about regulatory and what different regulatory agencies allow and how they keep people safe, think in that mindset as opposed to necessarily public sentiment. I know we face the challenges of, people don't understand glyphosate, how to use it properly, how important it is to farmers to be able to harvest their crops. Same thing for GMOs. I think a lot of the industry has gotten away from using that term GMOs. People don't understand that it's actually a positive. It's how we get insulin. It's how we make labradoodles, but it's also how we get even better seeds that require less resources, such as water, and can be adaptable into many weather conditions. So I would just say do due diligence on what the regulations are with the different regulatory bodies in the country.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question because we're getting a little close to time. So we have a whole section module next on sustainability, but I think it would be great if you could just give us a bit of a taster before we have that module on Thursday, in terms of how important is sustainability in the pharmaceutical and crop science industries.
Yes. So when I think about sustainability in the pharmaceutical industries, and when we generally think about the word sustainability, the first thing that pops into mind is carbon footprint. Yeah, flying, driving, so on and so forth. But when we think about sustainability from a pharmaceutical industries piece, it's thinking about adapting environmentally responsible practices, such as, that encompasses what we just saw, the entire product and drug development life cycle. So from drug development to disposal, how do we ensure our medicines are accessible, that are affordable, and that are sustainable for the entire population? Because we talk about health for all, yeah. And then Barbara, hunger for none, yeah. And so how do we transform our manufacturing of medicines to use clean energy, yeah? Green packaging, can we have biodegradable packaging in our pharmaceutical grade products and so forth? Reusing packaging and so forth, or how do you preserve the product's integrity and reduce excessive packaging and so forth? So that's just some ideas when we think about pharmaceutical sustainability beyond that carbon footprint piece.
Yeah. We are very much tied in the crop science area to the sustainability goals and commitments that we've set for 2030. And so we're on a good path with that. We, of course, have much more control over scope 1 and scope 2, but our supplier partners are really what make the scope 3 work for attaining these goals. And we are tied to it. Our bonuses are tied to our ability to reach our sustainability goals. So there is a high level of commitment and lots of opportunity. We have plants around the world where we're looking for ways that we can do things more efficiently and effectively with regard to sustainability. So one example, I just sat in on a session yesterday about our transportation management system and how we're revolutionizing our logistics and distribution so that we are on the road less delivering products. How do we maximize those trucks that are delivering the products to our farmers? So that's just one very small example, but in the machinery that we use, in the practices that we use, we are constantly looking for ways to improve that.
I
And
think
sorry, Laura, before I let you jump in, one aspect of ESG and sustainability is looking at the sustainability piece of our workforce. Yeah. So thinking about the ESG goals in regards to gender equity, female leadership and so forth. So we also look inwardly on what does our sustainable talent flow look like as well.
I think the message that I'm getting, and I think we'll certainly get that message again on Thursday, is that actually sustainability touches every part of a business, especially if you're embracing it seriously. And yeah, I definitely get that sense with Bayer as well. Okay, so final discussion question, and then we'll go into the video brief and wrap up. So just a small question to wrap up with. Can one or two of you tell everybody some of the biggest changes in both industries that you've seen in recent years?
So maybe let me jump in to this one. And I know that we're running out of time, so let me be fast. I think that the headline would be precision medicine, right? Individualized medicine. We are getting, and more companies also getting into cell and gene therapies, really identifying what an individual patient may need, what type of treatment therapy. So I think that's one of the biggest changes that we're having and will impact the way we look at the future. So yeah, very interesting area and topic. So really looking forward for the future a bit.
In crop science, I would say two of the biggest changes are just the digital innovation and the acceleration of technology in farming practices and enabling decision making for farmers. That's been huge. And then secondly, regenerative ag. How are we learning to do our business in a way that not only saves more, conserves more, but maybe produces more and puts back into the earth? And so that concept is relatively new and really changing our industry.
Yeah, I'm in an area in the UK where regenerative agriculture is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's inspiring actually. I think it makes farming even more beautiful than it is today. So it's definitely an exciting area. Okay, so before we go into the wrap up, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the video pitch that's a key part of the Elevate program. So as part, as you all know, the Elevate program will select 15 women-owned businesses from the group of women who are on the call and who have been selected already. And those 15 women will be matched against a mentor from Bayer. To select the mentees, it will be based on a pitch video. And so the criteria, we'll go into much more detail about the video pitch in the next session and also in module 3. But I guess the key headlines I just want you to take away so you can start to think about it and perhaps plan your time towards the end of next week is that the video pitch will need to be under 3 minutes. We would like the video pitch to demonstrate your product or service with real life use cases where possible. I think it's always good if you are presenting to camera, so it's not just a voiceover because people always respond to people. And it's also really important to remember that these pitch videos will be shared internally with Bayer, with the mentors, and it's a great opportunity for your customer journey to really start with these pitch videos. So we'll be sharing more about how to submit them, formats, some hints and tips, what to include, etc. as we go on. I just want to make sure you're aware there will be a 3-minute pitch video as part of the selection process, and that submissions will be due by 5 o'clock on the 4th of May. And again, we'll provide more details about that as we go along, but just trying to give you some warning that it's coming up. Okay, so I think perfectly timed. We have 1 minute. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all the speakers, Barbara, Thea, Cecilia. It's been incredible working with you, and you've dedicated a lot of time, energy and passion to today's session. So yeah, a huge thank you for all your time. We know that you're busy, and we really appreciate your support of the Elevate program. I also wanted to thank all the women-owned businesses who are on this call as well. It's great to see all the questions coming in. It's a big topic, or 2 big topics to start off the training sessions. So thank you for your patience, your enthusiasm, your engagement. We really, really appreciate it. And we hope that you found the session useful. As I said, we'll reply to the questions. I think what we'll do is we'll wait for the second module, so we've got all the questions in one place, and then we'll create an FAQ document that we'll share via email, so you have all those answers. So yes, that's it from me. We'll see you on Thursday for the sustainability session. And yeah, have a great rest of the day and great rest of the week if we don't see you on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank
Thank
you.
It was a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Mhm.
Bye.